Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to decode a super important security standard that you've probably seen, but maybe don't fully get. Think of it as the invisible shield protecting your credit card info every single time you tap, click, or swipe. So, what's the big secret? Well, the answer is this powerful and, as we're going to find out, pretty controversial set of rules called the PCI Data Security Standard. Basically, it's the framework that's supposed to stop companies from, just leaving your card numbers lying around on some unsecured server for anyone to grab. All right, so let's get right into it. What exactly is this thing? What's it all about at its core? So it's basically one single rulebook, a set of technical and operational must-dos for any business that handles your card information. I'm talking everyone from your corner coffee shop all the way up to the biggest online giants. It's kind of like the minimum height requirement for security. You just have to meet it. Now, to really understand why we even need this standard, we've got to jump in the time machine and go back to a time when things were, well, a whole lot messier. Yeah, before 2004, it was basically the Wild West. You had all the big players: Visa, MasterCard, Amex, Discover, JCB. And every single one of them had their own security rules. And get this, a lot of the time, those rules contradicted each other. So just imagine you're a small business owner trying to accept different cards. It was a complete nightmare, just super inefficient and confusing. And this is what's so wild. You have these massive companies that are usually fierce rivals, right? But they actually got together and said, okay, this is crazy. We need one rule book for everybody. And that's what led to the PCI Security Standards Council. They're like the independent referees who manage the standard now and, keep it updated as new threads pop up. Okay, so a company has to follow these rules, but how do they actually do that? How do they prove they're compliant? Because let's be clear, this isn't just a friendly suggestion. It's absolutely mandatory, and there are real consequences if you don't. Everything boils down to these 6 big goals. Now, they might sound a little broad, but think of it like building a castle. Build a secure network. That's your fortress walls and moats, with things like firewalls. Protect cardholder data. That's the treasure you're keeping safe inside. And implement strong access control. Well, that's making sure only the right people have the keys to the castle, using things like two-factor authentication. And believe it or not, these 6 goals expand into more than 220 super specific requirements. And it's not a one-size-fits-all deal either. The amount of heat a business is under really depends on how many transactions they're doing. So if you're a huge level 1 company processing millions of payments, you're going to face a super strict independent audit every single year. But if you're a small level 4 shop, you might just have to fill out a self-assessment questionnaire. It's all about scale. And here's the kicker. This isn't a one-and-done kind of thing. Nope. Proving you're compliant is an annual grind. Every year, you have to figure out exactly which of your systems touch card data, get them all checked out against the standard, and then officially report back to the card brands, basically swearing that you've done your homework. Okay, so this all sounds great on paper, right? But it brings us to the million-dollar question. Does it actually work? Does all this make companies safer? Or is it just a mountain of expensive paperwork? Well, the people who support it, like the famous security expert Bruce Schneier, say, yeah, it absolutely works. His take is that it's the best stick the industry has to, beat companies over the head with to make them take security seriously. The argument is, without it, a lot of businesses just wouldn't bother with even the basics, so it creates a really crucial starting point for everybody. But then you have the critics, and a lot of them are the folks inside the businesses who have to deal with this stuff. They say, look, these 220-plus rules are a huge burden. They're expensive, they're confusing, and it feels like a rigid checklist where different auditors can give you different answers. So for them, it's like trying to hit a very expensive, constantly moving target. And then you have the data breaches. This is where the story gets really complicated. Take Heartland Payment Systems. They were certified PCI compliant. They had the certificate on the wall. And yet, hackers still got in and stole over 100 million card numbers. I mean, what a disaster for a company that literally just passed its security exam. And unfortunately, that's not the only example. The list just keeps going. Remember the massive Target breach in 2013? Yep, they were also certified compliant just a few months before it happened. So all these huge, high-profile failures really made people ask a tough question. Can a once-a-year checkup really protect you from attackers who are working 24/7 to break in? So, where does that leave us? After looking at both sides of this, what's the real takeaway from this whole complicated mess? Well, It really comes down to this one crucial idea. Being compliant is not the same thing as being secure. Think about it. Compliance is like taking a snapshot. It proves you are following the rules on one particular day. But real security, that's a movie. It's a continuous 24/7 effort to protect yourself against threats that are always changing. So, what's the verdict? Look, PCI DSS provides an absolutely critical foundation. It's not a silver bullet, but it gets companies to the starting line. But in this never-ending race against cybercriminals, maybe there is no finish line. And that leaves us with the real question we have to ask ourselves. In a world where the threats are always evolving, can a static checklist ever really be enough to keep us safe?